First and foremost, I want to thank you for the opportunity to stand on this hallowed platform to share with you some of the things that I have very strong passion for. I have my roots in southern Nigeria, but in the course of my career development, I've had to handle some assignments across Africa, some parts of Asia, the Middle East, where we've been working on a lot of issues. I started my career development as a development banker, which you can also refer to as investment banking. So in the process of career growth, we were working with the European Investment Bank and also the World Bank, appraising projects across different parts of the world. Then in the course of time, as an African student studying abroad, I was also looking at advantages, opportunities which we can tap on from the international community to harness natural resources back in Nigeria. So I found myself in international marketing. Then also, over time, in the course of reactivation of projects, setup of projects in different places, I realized that the human person is the key if you want to make progress in any organization, any corporation. But unfortunately, we were fighting or maybe battling a very strong understanding that has been buried very deep in most of us as leaders of corporation. Part of it is that when you are thinking of making profit in a corporation, labor cost is one of the things that leaders watch very carefully. And so they want to maximize profit. So the more labor that is spent, the more money that is spent on labor is seen as a huge cost that needed to be watched. So development of the human person was completely lacking. These were some of the things I saw in the course of working in different companies. Then I also identified conflicts in different parts of the world as a threat. So we have a lot of things bunched up in the presentation I want to give to you. Conflict, its economic impact, and peace in perspective. A call for a shift in consciousness. This call for a shift in consciousness is a revolutionary call going on across the globe right now on how to make planet Earth a better place for everybody to live. Now, background, I want to establish a background, for the presentation. Conflict, violence, like we've all been hearing for some days now, or even from past studies, is a whirlwind that does not blow anybody any good. But however, some people feel that some wars necessarily need to be fought. In other words, they feel that wars are sometimes necessary. And the reason they give for this is that sometimes it's a stimulus for economic growth. In the United States, a study was done. We was pinpointing that a significant number of people believe that war, military spending, has enhanced the economy. But much later in the course of the presentation, we also would take some excerpts, which we found out from the study, to see whether this is true or not. You will agree with me that realities on ground confirm current upsurge of wars in different parts of the world and have dire impact on the economy of affected regions in particular, and the globe in general because of globalization. This is a huge one. There's an institute called the Institute for Economics and Peace, and we're going to draw copiously from the study which they carried out about 2 years ago, and see what's happening in different parts of the world, what war and conflict is causing in different parts of the world, and what can be done, what lessons can we learn from such studies. Now, with above realities, it is clear that something needs to be done. And so cultural diplomacy, funny enough, I only heard about cultural diplomacy sometime last year or so. All we'll be hearing about is diplomacy. But trying to weave culture into it, to me, was a very, very amazing thing. And when I did some in-depth study, I found something very wonderful about it. And I've learned more about cultural diplomacy since I've been here almost 3-4 days now. So we believe that by adopting the principles of cultural diplomacy, we may be able to find solutions to some of the depressing things surrounding war and conflict in different parts of the world. But however, looking at the context of cultural diplomacy, we feel that we need to weave or deepen the study of cultural diplomacy to include other things which revolve around the primacy of the human person. Because if you would agree with me, in any conflict situation, there must be a human being there. So conflict arises because human beings are involved. And I've also realized that once the human person is taken out and is empowered with a lot of things, which we'll share with you here today if time permits, we can make this world a better place for everybody to live. So there is a new reawakened consciousness. At the core of this consciousness is a shift from the old mind programming that posits life as a struggle in which civilization and social relations is driven by fear, unhealthy competition, scramble for perceived limited resources, and we versus them annihilating instincts. To a new consciousness. And what is the tenet of the new consciousness? It is a realization that growth in humanity is driven by care for one another, cooperation through harmonious coexistence of all the constituent peoples and other living elements of this planet. I want to tell you here that it is sheer ignorance for you to imagine that only human beings are the living organisms on planet Earth. Part of the realization we also share with you as we go on. So the purpose of this presentation is to highlight the nature and current trends of global conflict and war, the underlying causes of war, as well as the principal stages which, issues that lead to war, go through, the consequence of war on the economy. Then achievements recorded by cultural diplomacy initiatives in the presentation of conflict and restoration of peace in war-torn regions. Then finally, we will zero in what we can do to complement the efforts of cultural diplomacy by this new consciousness that is blowing across the globe. Some of them we've heard in past and bits since this conference started. So conflicts and wars, the global trend. I mentioned to you earlier on that there's an institute there's an institute which is designed for economics and peace. It's a non-profit organization which has its main objective as the shifting of world's focus to peace, human well-being, and progress. Every year, they carry out a survey which involves 162 countries in the world, and they have identified 22 indicators that gauge the absence of violence or the fear of violence across the globe. By divine providence and by my association with Hart International Business School in Boston, I had some relationship with some professors from Stanford University, that share some of all these things with us, and we're also part of the analysis of what came out of that study. Now, when we saw the report that was collated in these 162 countries, we saw a very frightening conclusions that could be drawn out of it. So what we'll do is a whole bunch of statistics and what have you, but I'll summarize them so that we can also relate with them within the space of a short time we have here. 7-year trend in violence over the past 60 years of increasing peacefulness. We are living in the most peaceful century in human history. However, the 2014 Global Peace Index shows that the last 7 years has shown a notable deterioration in levels of peace. So in other words, since the last 60 years, humanity will be having peace on planet Earth. But in the last few years, it is assuming a worrisome dimension. Out of the 162 countries covered by the latest study, just 11 were not involved in conflict of any kind or another. This study was carried out in 2014, but the information that we found on ground were collected in 2013. So you may see that some of the figures we have given here, developments in 2014 may not have been reflected. So you will see that out of these 162 countries, 11 were just not involved in conflict as one kind or the other. I'm sure the figure has come down. For example, Brazil, during the World Cup in Brazil, you remember? There was some conflict in that place because of class struggle, where the low-income people or the natives felt that the opportunity to watch the competition was removed from them. First, it was highly priced. They couldn't afford to go watch the football match. I know Brazil is a football nation. Then secondly, out of security control, they couldn't even get near where the competitions were taking place. So they took to violence. So that is not reflected in this report. I just give you an example to let you know that development in 2014 may not be reflected in this report. Then, of course, Nigeria also, in 2014, quite a lot of crises are in that place. So Nigeria may not be, if we were to do the study for 2014 now, I'm sure Nigeria will be included as one of those countries which will further reduce the level that will be identified here. The trend in war and insecurity are shifting from hostility between states to a rise in the number of intensity of internal conflicts. That is very profound. Like in those days, it used to be war between nations, but now it is war internally. And there's something that is responsible for it. That we'll also share with you as we're going on. The most peaceful countries are Iceland, Denmark, and New Zealand. Then again, New Zealand is there. But if you be reading a lot about New Zealand, most of the arms pass through New Zealand. So you are not involved in war, but you are supplying weapons through your land to fight wars in other places. So that is also something, food for thought for you. Okay. The most peaceful region of the world continues to be Europe, while the least peaceful region is South Asia. Afghanistan has been displaced at the bottom of the index by Syria due to a slight improvement in its peace, while Syria continues to deteriorate. South Sudan experienced the largest drop in the index this year, falling to 160th, and now ranking as the third least peaceful country. Major deteriorations also occurred in Egypt, Ukraine, and Central African Republic. The global economic impact of violence reached $9.8 trillion, which is equal to 2 times the total GDP of Africa. We're looking at a world where there's so much hunger in some parts of the world, and this much money is being spent on military armament. 500 million people live in countries at risk of instability and conflict. 200 million of whom live below the poverty line, living on about just $2 per day. So based on a new country analysis, the research identified 2 countries likely to deteriorate in peace over the next 2 years. They are Zambia, Haiti, Argentina, Chad, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Nepal, Burundi, Georgia, Liberia, and Qatar, because of internal conflicts that are going on in such places. But we hope that some of the things we're going to reveal to you later on, if the issues are addressed, we may well be able to stop some of these conflicts. A key conclusion that can be seen from the report of the GEPI is that conflicts in different regions of the world are assuming a worrisome dimension with inherent potential for worsening. And all this comes from a particular mindset, which we're also trying to deal with, more of it as we go on. Now, let's talk about causes and stages of conflict, of war. Of course, we know what conflict is all about, an active disagreement between people with opposing opinions or principles. Disagreement arises because the people have different perception of what is thought to be reality. So perception is a concept I want you people, who will deal more about it later on. How you see things, how you respond to signals and what have you, are all buried up in perception. The discernment of an individual is colored by past experiences and the mind programming held by such individuals. Same is true for a group. So owing to this inherent divergence of views, the ways a group of people, be it a country, state, federal government, or society in general organize, can create both the root causes of conflict and the conditions into which it is likely to occur. Consequently, any social group or society which is so structured and administered in a manner that some people are treated unequally and unjustly, conflict is likely to erupt. More so if its leaders do not represent the interests that ensure meeting the basic needs of all the members of that society. As humans, we all have basic needs. Everyone needs to be recognized as an individual. With a personal identity, everyone needs to be able to feel safe. If these needs are not met, people protest, and protesting can lead to rebellion and violence. Many people find their identity and security in their cultural group. So clashes between different cultural groups also lead to dispute that can easily turn violent. So group dynamics, because that is also key to some of the things that cause conflict in the world. Group of people share a common predisposition. One of the things I want you to understand is that if there's only one person in this room, it's not likely that a conflict will arise. But so long as you have two persons, and in any social interactions, you have plenty of people, groups begin to emerge. I take a classical case of ICD, you will discover that there are groups within the group, the big group, and these are drawn along the lines of culture. So within ICD, I believe that 2 or 3 persons who are likely to be from the same place, you will see a level of affinity between them. They relate more with each other. So religious belief also is an issue. So if there are some Christians here who share common religious belief, if there are some Muslims, there's also the tendency that they would conglomerate, they will come closer to each other. Language is also an issue. So you also see that people also come together along the lines of language. Ethnicity is also an issue. Then needs. The bigger group has a common need. All of us here, we have the needs of thirst for acquisition of knowledge. That is what has brought us here. So it is not possible to have a group that is 100% homogeneous. So therefore, a congenial coexistence can only be achieved to the principle of compromises, a framework built on mutual respect for each other, divergent views. So time is going, I'm going to be leaving one racy. Issues about conflict and all those stuff, we know about them already, but we'll just go to the key thing that we want to talk about. Then the factors that must be present for conflict to arise, they are also there. I believe that this write-up or the presentation will be uploaded for you people to read more about it later, but I just hammer on the key issues. Good, it's good for us to talk about this because conflict is a process, a cluster of events taking time to evolve and reshape into violence and war. And there are 6 distinct factors. One is the beginning. It starts with, a difference that's identified between people. Then there's a period of early growth, where you begin to see divisions, we versus them begin to emerge. Then by the time you know it, it is at the stage 2 actually that you see, a lot of issues begin to come up, and by the time you know it, the cycle begin to increase. The group that is more aggrieved will be trying to win converts of how they should get support because they feel that they have a unique cause worth fighting for. Then there's the secretary deadlock, looking for a way out. Is also that. If you look at it, my position is that diplomacy, the way it is practiced in conventional diplomacy, is that rather than take the right step to curb conflict and the possibility of it escalating into war, should have been in life cycle 1 and perhaps life cycle 2. But what do we see in the world today is that they come in at the point of 4, 5, and 6 when the damage has been done. So part of what we're going to conclude with is that if we as human beings decide to change our perception about things, how we see each other, conflict can be dealt with at life cycle 1 and life cycle 2. So we don't need to cause the havoc before we come to sit down to talk again, because that's what is happening in the world today. Economic consequences of war. We're also trying to look at human cost versus economic cost. Because any conflict, war, you have what is called a human cost and versus the economic cost. But most of the time, what is documented is the economic cost. The human cost, nobody talks about it. Okay, 2,000 people died in the process. But do you know the aspirations and dreams that would have been better used for humanity, growth of humanity that has been destroyed there? And another unique thing, human cost is irreplaceable. Once it's destroyed and gone, killed, it's gone forever. But economic cost over time, when things get better, we can work harder and rebuild the countries. I'd like to share this study with you. Again, there was a study that was also carried out to measure, to test that postulation, that some wars need to be fought. And giving reasons for economic growth, spending on military discipline to stimulate the economy as a reason. So there was a study that was carried out, about 2-3 years ago, which was centered on the U.S. economy. Over the last 70 years, during major periods of conflict, identified the last 7 years. The study looked at World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Cold War, the Iraq War, and the Afghanistan wars. And they also talked about some macroeconomic indicators that they needed to measure over the period of time. So they picked GDP, public debt and levels of taxation, consumption as a percentage of GDP, then investment as a percentage of GDP. All these indices you have here, they have immense impact on the well-being of the human person. Some funny revelations, also came up, which confirmed that all those diseases we mentioned, they were all negative for the period, either before or after. Some of them today, we still find difficulty in dealing with them. The cost of fighting the Second World War in the U.S. economy is being reaped by this current generation. So we've talked so much about wars. What do we need to do? Cultural diplomacy to the rescue? Yeah, cultural diplomacy has made some notable achievement in the process of doing that. And we want to particularly pay our respect to ICD for what they've been doing in this respect. In the last few days I've been around, I've met an amazing set of people from different backgrounds, from different cultures, different parts of the world. And to me, that is amazing. So if a platform is created where people can come together like this to understand ourselves, I think it's something that we need to cherish, and comment. But however, new jobs need to be done. And this is where the new reawakening comes in. I don't know whether I have time to just play about a 5-minute video, please?
Yes.
Okay, good. Come here. So there's a new scientific discovery that is currently rewriting the belief of who we are as humans. Because I said before, in every conflict situation, just a second. Somebody needs to help me here. Okay, I got it here. Just pause it for a while. Okay, let me just pick this one. Bruce Linton is a medical doctor, and he's a specialist in the study of human cells. What you don't know as a person is that you, who is sitting, everybody sitting here has over 50 trillion cells locked up in us, all living in harmony. And all of them, they have different functions to keep us healthy. So you can also draw analogy from that planet Earth has just 7 billion, I hear, people, in this whole wide world, and yet there's so much struggle for scarce resources. You know? So the new consciousness is that as human beings, we are not victims. We are empowered naturally to create the kind of environment that we desire to live in. And we owe ourselves a responsibility, and humanity also a responsibility, to make sure that there's no need for war. There's no need to scramble for things when there's supposed to be abundance. The only thing that is creating the scarcity around the world is fear and suspicion of the next person. So that must be dealt with. I hope I have time to talk about that, but let me just enjoy the video clip, then we'll come back to it. Volume, please.
Can I have the lights down in the front? What I'm going to be talking about today is the foundation of something that's so exciting for Thank you very much. I am so honored to be here with all these wonderful speakers. It's just a privilege, and I want to thank Lynn for this great opportunity to bring me over to talk to some of you. Can I have the lights down in the front? What I'm going to be talking about today is the foundation of something that's so exciting for this reason. We're in the process of an evolution right now, and the evolution is going to be absolutely wonderful, except we have to go through a little bit of darkness on the way out of the old process and something coming in. So that what you're going to be seeing in the world and what you're experiencing in the world right now is an upheaval. It'll start probably very profoundly in the United States within the year. And but why it's important for me to let people know this is that don't be focusing on the darkness that's happening. Be focusing on what is the consequence of the darkness. That we will create a planetary unity, which is a requirement. And it's interesting because we can't even live on this planet with 6.5 billion people. And yet we always want to know, well, how can we survive this? And the beautiful part that I found was in understanding of biology is this, that when you look at yourself, you see yourself as an individual, but this is a misperception, that you're actually a community of upwards to 50 trillion cells. Every cell is the equivalent of a miniature human. And the interesting thing is, here's a civilization under your skin with 50 trillion entities in it, and they can live in such blissed out harmony that if you're blissed out, 50 trillion citizens under your skin are blissed out. And it's very interesting because we're always looking for the answers, and there's an old saying, look inward. The answers, look inward for the answers. And the answer, the truth is, in fact, yes. If you look inwards and understand the nature of how 50 trillion cells can live in a community and apply that to the so many billion people on this planet, we will be able to experience the bliss and harmony that a happy human body can experience. And we're not there yet, but this is an evolution that's in process right now. And the wonderful part is that every one of you will be in this evolution because it's unfolding within the next year or two. It'll start. And I think 2012 might be when this transformation might take place. So rather than looking on the dark side when you start seeing things, please start looking past the dark into the beautiful thing that's going to happen, the unity of the planet. It's a biological evolution that we're going through. As you already can hear, I speak very quickly. So I prefer if you take this website down, you can get free articles, download articles on the stuff I'm talking about. Just download them, record it, and their references and everything else are in there as well. Okay? Question I want to start off is, who are we? And it's important because from a biological point of view, you've been given the impression that you're some kind of frail vehicle of biology, that everything can attack you, viruses, bacteria, sugar, don't eat white sugar, that'll kill you, all these kinds of things. And this is the belief that we've walked into of our frailty. But the truth is, are we really that frail? So for example, you can see people walk across fire, and that doesn't really predict frailty to me. You've also probably seen reports of a woman lifting a car to get a child out from underneath a trapped vehicle. Imagine that, a woman who's not even trained, just not even an athletic woman, can get out there and lift up over 1,000 pounds or more and hold up a vehicle to get a car out. That's not a frail person either. Another thing that's interesting, and this is an example of what's happening in the United States and in the Deep South. We have some Pentecostal Baptist people down there that work themselves up in a religious ecstasy state. And in that ecstasy state, they testify that God protects them. And then to testify to that, some of them play with poisonous vipers like rattlesnakes and copperhead snakes. And that's pretty interesting because even if they get bitten, they don't really have any consequences of it. But that's really mild compared to some of them, because some of them actually drink strychnine in toxic doses to demonstrate that God protects them. And they actually have no harmful effects from drinking strychnine. So when you think about this, you can walk across fire, you can lift up thousands of pounds without thinking about it, you can drink poison. This doesn't really sound like a frail human being. But the issue is then, are these extraordinary people? No, they're just everyday average people. But what's extraordinary about them is this: they have a belief. They have a belief in what they do, unshakable belief. And with that belief, they do miracles. And the issues are that we have to understand that we are far more powerful, except we bought other kinds of beliefs that actually disenfranchise us. And this is what I want to talk about, because the idea is we bought into a system of our frailty and that we really blame our genes for most of the problems that we have. And the simple reality is this: you are not controlled by your genes, you're controlled by your beliefs. And you will be able to do all these miracles and more and better than these people if you believe you can. And that comes out, obviously, I paraphrase somebody else saying that. And the reality about this is that we have to understand what's going on and how this belief works, and how a belief of disempowerment is the same as a belief as empowerment. And so I want to start off with the fact that I told you you are a community of upwards to 50 trillion cells. Well, here's a very interesting fact, that there's not one new function in this entire human body that's not already present in every single cell. You show me a physiological system in here, and I'll show you.
And spirituality. And I want to emphasize here, there is a whole world of difference between religion and spirituality. Spirituality is what connects us as humans to nature, And what is going on right now is that if we understand ourselves, what we are made up as human beings, there are a lot of tools which we could reveal to you much later on how you can rewrite whatever thing that is happening around you, whatever thing that is buried in you. There's a way you can reprogram it and become a new person, and to become an agent for the change which we're talking about. So change is possible, irrespective of how bad the situation is. So First, as individuals, we're empowered, and this empowerment, we can use it collectively as a community or a group to have a better world. Now, the old belief, I want to talk about this. People begin to say, where did this issue of conflict, where did it begin? You remember this fellow, Charles Darwin? So many years ago, he wrote a lot of stuff, which at that time was good, and we're talking about the theory of mutation and natural selection, where it is emphasized that the strongest person survives. In other words, if you are not strong, the strong will eat you up, and take power off you. That was where this issue of unhealthy competition started. So because of that, society is structured. It's structured in such a way that you have the perception that you have to be suspicious of the other person, and you have to start taking position that if you are not careful, the other person is going to suck you up. That is where the unhealthy competition comes up. So we must break from that mindset. We must break from that mindset. Some of these things we're talking about here, we have tried them. We've tried them on several institutions. Some of the things I share with you here, we now run them in some business schools, where at the point of entry into the business school, we subjected some of all these trainings, and they come out better leaders. We've used them on youth who are traumatized. Back in Africa and in North America, we had issues of sex slave. So we had issue of ladies, young girls, who were just taken and used, deprived, and dumped, traumatized. These people had no hope about life anymore. We took them up and we subjected them some of all this training, and they came out better human beings, more confident, and what have you. Now, love has a very great role to play in this thing. Now, what is the love? You must love yourself first before you can help another person. But some of us have bottled in us hatred because of past experiences and what have you. So between love, you have love on the one extreme, then you have hate and fear on the other side. And also, if you operate from that mindset, you also begin to attract things that fall into this way or the other way. One key thing I must tell you people, I'm sorry I'm running out of time, is that when you operate in the environment of love, your human body is designed to secrete certain hormones. In the medical world, there's what is called dopamine. There's what is called oxytocin. There's what is called growth agent. You secrete them and you see the world in a better place. On the other hand, if you operate in the atmosphere of fear, which is very predominant in our world today, then hormones are also secreted, which are stress agents and what have you, that makes you disempowered you. On this note, I want to stop here. And like I told you before, you'll get more about these materials if we happen to meet again or you visit our website. So thank you very much for the opportunity.